Okay, we are live now. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you may be. I hope that everyone is doing well. Welcome to Monk Chat tonight. Monastic chat, better, right, than Monk Chat. And here at Empty Cloud Buddhist Insights. So glad for you to join us. And I see people already saying hello, like Rick and Elenice and probably some other people there in silence. We can see there's 11 people watching. We know how many of you are out there. We got Bhumika, hello, and Mary. And yeah, so in the beginning, you notice already in these few streams that I've done that I talk a little bit to kind of give people time to jump on before I do okay, let's get into the chat actually, because people are busy, and they got a lot of things going on, and kids and family or their pets, or the DoorDash is not on time or something like that. So try to give them a minute or two before we actually start. And all these highs, beautiful. It feels so nice to be so welcome, right? By Lee and Karuna and Gurgle, Edward, Jake, Manal, all the usual suspects. Everyone here, Kit, Jayanta. Hello to everyone. I know Fridays are the worst days for traffic, right? Isn't that so? So I hope none of you had to experience too much of that traffic. But it's also Friday, right? Thank Buddha it's Friday, right?
Yeah.
TBIF instead of TGIF. Yeah. Olinda, Jang. Hello to everyone. Okay, I think it's a good time to start. So as I said, this is Empty Cloud Buddhist Insights. I'm Sanata Vihari Bhikkhu, and I'm joined today with Aya.
I'm Aya Brahmavara. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Some of you might be even more familiar with Aya Brahmavara than me.
And some of you will be more familiar with Bhante Sanata Vihari.
I had a nice surprise this morning when I found out that you were watching the talk this morning. I didn't know you were. I had no idea. And then I was like, "Oh, that was nice." So,
that was great.
I don't know. It feels nice when and it's a different kind of niceness when other monastics are watching you, especially ones that you spend so much time with, because we can take each other for granted sometimes and be like, "Oh, they're there. Like I can listen later, or I got other things to do." So when someone else that's that close with you tunes in when they can be doing other things, it adds a different level of niceness to it. So I appreciate you watching the talk.
It was a great start to my day.
All right, so we got more people here. Luisa on time today. I think she commented on the morning one on YouTube. Sorry for being late, or that she was late, but you're on time. Amaranta also here. And yeah, this is Monk Chat, so go ahead and start formulating your questions or comments. Start typing them in. Yeah.
Is there one at the top? Is there a question at the beginning?
Oh, let's check.
Can we go back? Yeah, I think I saw way up at the top.
Oh, yes, you're right. Oh, yeah, from Rick. Good eyes. Let's share it. Okay, it says, Venerables, what are skillful means when going through times of transition that significantly impact our lives? Thank you. Aya, what do you think?
That's a good question. One for both of us, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Rick, for that question. Yeah, I would say maybe we're all going through times of transition. I don't know, but I certainly relate to your question, because I feel as if, it's almost like the rate of change that I'm experiencing is accelerating. Maybe that's because I'm getting older, but I think there are external factors in the world around me also, the world around us, that are changing rapidly, and we're kind of moving into uncharted territory in some ways in relation to climate and the environment, for instance, and food supplies and so forth. So this is just an example, quite a significant example for me. But whatever you're referring to, Rick, how do we apply skillful means to perhaps a sense of not knowing where we're headed or what we should do next, or maybe being a bit overwhelmed at times by the change that's happening around us. Transition, by its definition, is kind of chaotic, isn't it? It's a time of upheaval, a time of the comfort zones being changed, the challenge to our habits happening. This is not a bad thing. And of course, we know very well that one of the principal teachings of the Lord Buddha is that things are constantly changing. And so it's like, this is a perennial question. How do I deal with that? How do I relate to that? And actually, I would say then the way to relate to that is to just embrace the entire path of practice and to make it important, to make it a priority for ourselves, because this is our refuge, the refuge in mindfulness, the refuge in virtue. So whatever's happening, however things are changing, whether it's intentional for us or unintentional, whatever situation we find ourselves in, it's going to be one of change, and it may be very dramatically changing or unpredictably changing or quickly changing for us. Whatever change we're experiencing, we can apply the path factors and bring up, the importance of living a wholesome life, So whatever's happening, can I be very careful to assess, how am I behaving? How is life going? Am I living a virtuous life? Is there anything I'm doing here that is harmful in any way? And to let this be our yardstick, it's like a point of focus. It's like there's stability in that, like I can find refuge in the path. So to find the anchor there, making sure that I'm following the precepts, I'm avoiding harm, I'm doing good where I can. I'm sharing what I can. I'm being generous where I can. I'm being kind. These things are an enormous refuge for us, actually, these ways of being. And then to try to also develop mindfulness, right effort, to practice meditation. Because this helps us to stay calm amidst the fluctuating, the worldly winds blowing around us. If we have a meditation practice, isn't it, we get to have more objectivity and more of a sense of being, rather than being buffeted by the winds of change, actually being able to observe them and to have a place of a sort of sense of peacefulness amidst all of that. So not to forget meditation practice. And actually the time when I'm least likely to meditate is when I'm feeling, there's so much going on, I don't quite know. And, I must, I'm busy with this or with that. And actually, isn't that just the most important time of all for us to be willing to step back from all of that, come into the place of simplicity, peacefulness, and even if it means we're sitting and observing agitation in the mind, nevertheless we've stopped and we're willing, right, to be present and develop that presence, that mindfulness. So there we are, the path factors of, meditation, samadhi, of sila, of virtue, and also remembering, to bring in the right view. We can always contemplate the Four Noble Truths. In practical terms, it's like, is there suffering? Am I suffering? If so, can I discern the cause? Why am I suffering? And we can always do this investigation, and figure, what is it I want that's not present? What is it I don't want here? What am I railing against? Can I discern that? And when we can appreciate there's suffering, there's the cause, we can also let go of the cause of suffering again and again, just to keep letting go. And this, amazingly, really does take us to a place of uncertainty, not knowing. And so actually, the experience of transition is also one of uncertainty, not quite knowing. This is a very helpful situation for us, right? It's like, this is the path. This is the samsaric situation. This is the situation for everybody, one of constant flux and change. And this is the way to chart our course through that change. So it's always applicable. And change is not a problem then for us. Change is like an opportunity to bring in the path factors, to remember the Four Noble Truths, and to practice for liberation. So I hope that's a helpful answer. And I want to invite them to some reflections.
I think you said it all already, Aya. I think I don't really have anything to add from a Dhamma perspective, but I can add something from my personal lived experience, probably. I was kind of born this way. This is like my character, my personality. I'm a novelty kind of seeking person. So things have always been changing in my life, but my mind is inclined to and directed towards and rest on the novelty experience of like something new, right? Like excitement. And I'm always focused on like the possibilities, right? Even going into the unknown, like, wow, what can happen? Like amazing. Kind of like when you're watching a movie, like what's going to happen next? I don't know. It's exciting, right? So my mind has always been that way. Even to this day, my mind is, anytime there's a change or a transition or I don't know, I know that I'm very aware and mindful, and I consider the difficulties and the challenges and how things can actually go for the worse, because change means it can go better or worse. It can stay the same. There's so many possibilities. But my mind naturally kind of like always picks something that's makes me happy, and it'll just get stuck there. So although I think for me, probably it's coming from like previous lives, maybe I really believe that everyone to some degree can train themselves to do this, because I've also done this, but like in my meditation practice, I purposely direct my mind towards wholesome, skillful states, instead of kind of like the more traditional practice of just observing, whatever comes up. My mind naturally inclines. So when metta comes up, like my mind sticks on the metta, like when joy arises, my mind sticks on it because it's always looking for that novelty. And yes, when I'm meditating and there's joy and there's metta, there's still like pain in my back, pain in my leg. It's hot, I'm sweating. So there's those difficulties there, but my mind inclines towards the more like positive things. So, with this change, I'm sure that you can find some things that are, positive or wholesome in it, and, bring those to mind, because our mind always inclines towards the negative, right? And we have a negative bias like this. Many psychological studies have shown, I think it's like for every one good thought we have, or positive or wholesome, whatever we want to call it, we have like 5 negative ones. So it's like a 5-to-1 ratio. So even if you're just at normal, like base level, we're always going towards the negative. So this applies when we're confronted with change. We're going to think of 5 negative things about our transition or change and only maybe think about 1. So let's try to balance that out. So I would like to invite you to try to, for every unwholesome, negative, or fearful thought that comes up in the mind about this change, this transition, try to cultivate a wholesome, positive one, and kind of just at least have a more balanced perspective, because for most people, we are going to think about the worst case scenarios, or we're going to focus on the most painful part of the transition in this moment, instead of focusing on the wider view, right? Like getting the whole context and seeing the reality of it, which might be difficulties, but there's also a lot of good things there too, So just kind of try to see if you can direct your mind towards those things which are at least not as horrible, those things that are troubling you about transitions. So that would just be my own advice from my own lived experience. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go down.
Yeah, it's really true what you say about negative bias. This is an extraordinary discovery, isn't it? Yeah. Look at that. It's quite helpful to know that, isn't it? Yeah. Because then it's like, oh, there's not something wrong with me. This is just the wiring here.
Yeah.
I can expect that.
Yeah.
So that's, a kind of reassuring thing to know about.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people, and this is like been my experience with counseling people, about half of the people that go in there will be like, you know what? I know you've seen a lot of people with X, but I'm different. And I'm like, Matt, 50% of the people can't be unique. Like, like everyone's claiming to be unique, but they all can't be unique. This doesn't make sense, like statistically, but everyone feels that way. That's how it feels. We all feel like there's something wrong with me. My thing is like, I'm the worst person. I'm the most hopeless person. My condition is the worst. And so there's that kind of element. But once you kind of see these kind of studies that show like, no, it's not that I'm a person that uniquely thinks negatively. Like everyone thinks negatively, we just can't see into other people's minds. So it does kind of bring this normalizing aspect, right? And then that allows you to be more compassionate towards yourself. Instead of seeing yourself as defective or bad or whatever, you see, no, I'm just like everyone else. I just don't have insight into these kind of this knowledge about others. All right, let's see. Who else is here? Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I got lost there a bit. Okay, here, I think John. I live in an area where I feel I don't belong. I don't have money, status, prospects, or a skinny appearance right now. Generally, I feel disrespected by others and feel others won't speak with me. There's a second part to it. What does the Dhamma say about belonging and being treated with general disrespect because of the status or other factors?
Wow, that so connects with what we were just talking about somehow for me.
Yeah.
It's like,
all right. Yeah.
It really does, John, because that sense that you're conveying, for me, what I'm really hearing is that sense of being kind of almost like, could I use the word like outcast? Like I don't belong here, like I'm not accepted here. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I that's what I'm picking up. It's like I don't fit because of this reason and that reason. That makes me feel not so good about myself. I don't have the money, the status, the body type, or whatever. And so, yeah, how many of us feel like that, one way or another? I'm not in any way wishing to detract from what you're saying. It's just also this sort of invitation to consider that you're not alone, and many of us can relate to what you're expressing. I certainly can. And so that in and of itself, I hope, can be something a little bit helpful, because we can look at other people and feel like they're so fine, they don't seem to have any issues, they look so slim or whatever it is, they look so successful, so well dressed, they look so as if they're coping, as if they're making some sort of a success of this confusing mess that is my life. But actually, I think many of us, we may look the part, but actually inside we can often be a bit of a quivering wreck, and really suffering a lot, but it doesn't actually show. So we're not really able then to connect with each other and appreciate that actually we're all in the same boat here. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily true for you, where you are, and the people that you're observing. It's just a possibility. And then the question, really, how do I work with these feelings of alienation, perhaps, or inadequacy, perhaps, or just not being successful enough or good enough in some way? And just as Bhante was pointed out to us, look, there's this negative bias. It's like, first thing, I can accept that I'm having these thoughts, these really sort of self-disparaging or defeating thoughts. 5 negative thoughts for every 1 positive thought. My goodness, we're being assailed then. And this is, pretty much science. We're being assailed by all these negative thoughts and maybe judging ourselves, criticizing ourselves, berating ourselves, kind of endlessly. So, okay, how do I, first of all, recognize that this is not personal. This is not me and mine. This is the state of the mind that we have. So can I, first of all, kind of decouple a little bit the sense of being in it and start observing it. Start observing. This is the Dhamma. This is the Dhamma. This is the reality of this mind at this point in time. And my sense is, like as soon as we start to observe, we become more like the therapist than the patient. And actually, we're both.
Yeah.
We can be both. We can be the teacher and the student. We can be the Buddha and the Dhamma, this raise ourselves up, everybody, see ourselves as for the potential that we have, for what's in a way already here for us. But we're just forgetting and getting confused and getting obscured. The mind gets clouded with all sorts of rubbish, really. And so we just want to recognize that there is this possibility to observe. Be the Buddha, seeing the Dhamma. You can do this. Meditate, sit and feel. When I have these thoughts, when these thoughts come up into the mind, how does it feel? And be present for that. And this is how change can start to happen for us. And let's remember the Buddha's teachings, that actually there's a sense of innate purity here. There's innate well-being. There is original purity. And we seem to be conditioned to think of ourselves as innately kind of sinful and wrong and bad, and and this is just the negative bias that we're all bearing, we're all carrying. So to have that understanding and bring in then counterbalancing energies. So we see a lot of negativity, we see a sense of alienation, we see a sense of, say, inadequacy or lack, some kind of lack. That's not a good thing. Okay, so let's bring in some qualities that will help to alleviate, to give some relief, so that we then can have an angle on this and we can really start to learn from the situation. Bring in loving kindness. Bring in a wish for your own well-being. Bring in a sense of appreciation for your life, for all your good qualities. Bring in a sense of kindness. And when the mind is criticizing and judging yourself or other people, just remember kindness. May they be well. May I be well. We don't even have to feel kind or loving, but we can bring in those thoughts, and those thoughts will do their work. They will soften, make things more gentle, make things more safe, so that we can investigate the mind. And slowly but surely release, all the painful obscurations. All of this is not yours, This isn't who and what you are. This isn't to be held on to. Just letting go is the best we can do. And we have all the tools to do that work of letting go through insight. So I hope that's helpful. And thank you very much for the question, which is such a connecting question. It's like, I can totally relate. And thank you for that, from probably everybody listening.
What came to mind, Aya, was the first blessing from the Mahamangala Sutta, Asevana Chebala Nam Pandita Nancha Sevana, and so on. Not to associate with, usually they put it nice, foolish, bala, but bala really means like someone who's stupid, sorry, but it's a strong word. Bala is a strong word in Pali. But to associate with the panditas, it's like a smart person, right? A wise person, an intelligent person we should associate with, right? And then throughout the suttas, the Buddha says that we should always take into consideration what the wise would approve of and wouldn't approve of, but not what the foolish would approve of and wouldn't approve of. So, when we find ourselves in situations where people are being a bit mean, right? Judgmental and criticizing in a negative way, that's a foolish action, right? That's a foolish action that they're doing. And we don't have to accept those foolish actions or that foolish speech. The Buddha's clearly telling us, don't associate with foolishness, with stupidity. We don't go with that, right? That is not a reflection of who you are or the reality of things. That's a distortion of reality. Anything that's cruel or mean or very critical about someone in a negative way. But we should be only concerned with the opinions of the wise, of the intelligent, right? Of the kind people, right? Of our kalyanamitas, our spiritual friends. So we might be in a society or in a community surrounded by people who are acting foolishly, but their opinions don't really matter much because they're coming from a place of delusion and hatred. right? And all in greed. And we should be concerned with the opinions and about the people who are wise, right? So we can kind of zone that out, like me as a monk. Sometimes I'm walking down the street or on public transportation, and people will yell mean things at me, or just silly dumb things, and it's never fazed me, because what they're saying, I know it's dumb to begin with, right? So I kind of think about it like when a little child comes up to you and they may tell you like some bad words, like a little kid when they're first learning how to speak, and they're like, "Oh, you're a poo-poo head" or something, right? And they're trying to they use some words to try to insult you, and you just start laughing, right? It's like comical. You're like, "Oh, this they don't know what they're talking about," right? So
Yeah.
with a lot of these kind of situations, when I found myself in, I'm like, "Oh, that's greed in that person. Oh, that's hatred in that person, right? Oh, that's delusion in that person." Like, if that would come from my teacher, or from the fellow monks, oh yeah, I would be hurt, because I consider them as wise and intelligent. But coming from someone who, is proving the contrary by being mean and cruel, their opinion doesn't matter to me. I don't want to be accepted by them, actually. I don't need their validation. I'm not even seeking it. It doesn't matter to me. They're like all the way over there. It's not even in my mind. I don't care. But the people who are wise, the people who are smart, the people who are kind and compassionate, I very much care about what they have to say. So I think, not focusing on those people who are being mean, because their opinion doesn't matter to begin with, because it's coming from a hateful place, and try to focus more on those people who care about you, you know, and those people that maybe you don't know them personally, but you see them as an example, of a person who you would want to be part of your circle, or your friends, or your family, and kind of, you may not know them personally, but kind of take what they say as the important thing, and you won't hear them criticize people's caste, religion, creed, gender, or body type. They'll never do such a thing, and those are the people's opinion who we should focus on. And I know it may be difficult when 90% of the information or talk that you're getting is negative, right, and criticizing you. It might be difficult, but that just might mean that we might have to kind of be very selective about, the people that we associate with, the places that we go, what kind of entertainment that we take, that we participate in, and that we engage in. So coming to a place like this where there's going to be no judgment. I mean, this is the community. You can think about this as your community instead of your actual physical community, right? If you don't feel safe there, if you don't feel comfortable, think about this. The virtual Sangha, and you can think about all the Buddhist practitioners in the past, all in the present, and all in the future. You're part of that community too, right? And that community will never judge you in these other ways. They don't care about your status. They don't care about how much money you have, or your body type, or et cetera, et cetera. So focus on these people. Focus on this community, on the Mahasangha, on the Arya Sangha, and this larger community instead of. That's one of the benefits of modern technology, right? Like of social media and streaming live. Like you can find community outside of your physical location, right? So take refuge in that. Take refuge in the Sangha, right? That's what we do. We take refuge in the Sangha. So it's just kind of more of like refocusing and taking a different perspective, and being very selective of what you let catch your attention, right? And who you associate with, and whose opinions you value and whose you don't. If someone's opinion comes from a place of greediness, cruelty, delusion, ignorance, it doesn't matter. You should only be focused about the opinion of the wise and the compassionate. Let's see. Then we have a question here from Mark also. Did the Buddha ever talk about taking action when others are deliberately spreading misinformation or downright fraud, or just them be,
Let them be.
or just let them?
Yeah.
Do you remember the story about the young lady who was kind of tricked by a group of Brahmins to accuse the Buddha of getting her pregnant?
Yeah.
Remember that? So this is like a very well-known story in Dhamma, that there was some Brahmins who were very jealous of the Buddha in a certain town, and they hired this young girl to go to the monastery every day, and say that she's going to go meet the Buddha and hang out with him, and pretend that she's pregnant. And then, little by little, she kept adding more cushion under her clothing. And then people saw her going to the Buddha all the time. They're like, "What's going on with her?" She's like, "Oh, I'm going to go be with the Buddha. I spent time with him alone and stuff like that. And then once you got a real big belly, people started saying, well, whose baby is that? And it's like, oh, it's the Buddha's, right? And then the whole town came, right? And that's exactly what the Brahmins wanted. They wanted to create a scandal in the Sangha. And she started accusing the Buddha of like, oh, how could you do this? And everyone in the town, I thought you were a holy person, but you're over here getting, unmarried girls pregnant and all this kind of stuff. And so then Ananda got very worried, I believe the story goes, and he tells Bhante, let's leave, we're not wanted here. And then the Buddha says something to the effect of like, well, if we go to the next town and the same thing happens, are we going to leave again? And if we go to the next town and this happens, are we just going to keep running forever? He's like, 3 things cannot be hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So we're going to stay here. And they endured all that misinformation, right? Until eventually one day, I think the padding that the young girl had under her stomach fell out, And then people in the town started like accusing her, right? Like, oh, you're spreading misinformation. And they wanted to find out who set her up for it. But unfortunately, these Brahmins caught her and they murdered her before she was able to tell the truth about who set her up and who set up the Buddha to do all these things. And we can find many examples in the suttas, like when the man comes and he shouts at the Buddha and he insults the Buddha, right? And the Buddha just remains in pure equanimity, right? The Buddha doesn't argue with the world, although the world argues with the Buddha, right? So, that might be a lot. Maybe we're not there yet. We can't, our threshold might not be that high as the Buddha, but we can think about that as an example, right? Like of trying to develop or practice or embody as much equanimity as we can, and also patience and tolerance and endurance, and coming from a place of non-reactivity too, because if we let these things get to us, we're going to react, and then we're going to act and behave in an unskillful manner, right? And then we're going to feel bad about it, right? Because we're practicing Dhamma, and I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that. So give yourself time really to just kind of be open with it, right? And even though you're being insulted or treated bad and people are spreading this misinformation, the truth. The truth. So you should be free from blame. People can say whatever they want about you, but you know who you are, right? And take refuge in yourself. You know who you are. So you shouldn't be worried about what other people say. That's what my mom would always tell me as a kid, She would say something to the effect of like, they don't support you, so why should you care what they say? Like basically they're not feeding you, they're not clothing you. Like, why do you care about these people's opinion if they're not taking care of you, right? So that's always stuck with me. And in Spanish, it sounds like very nice. It's like a nice rhyme, like street smart kind of knowledge. And that's always stuck with me. And I've carried it my whole life. Like, hey, who is this person who's saying this first?
How do you say in Spanish?
My mom will say something like, si no te mantienen, o que, al cabo que ni te mantienen, que te valga. And then she would say like, it's not a nice word to say. I don't want to say it. It's like a thing. That's why I say like street smart kind of thing, right. And that always stuck with me. It's just like, she's right. Like I used to care about all these people's opinions, but who are they? They're not my mom. They're not my dad. They're not my sister. They're not my brother. They're not my best friend. Who are these people? They're people who don't care about me. So why should I care about people who don't care about me, right? And whatever they're saying, whatever misinformation, the people that I love and love me, they don't care about that. It's not going to affect them, The truth will come out eventually. And I think, you should really take refuge in that the truth, that the people who love and care about you know the truth, and that even, let's say it's like some legal case or a lawsuit, take comfort that that you're blameless, right? And that eventually the truth might come out. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but at some time, maybe even after you pass away, right? The truth will come out, but the truth will be there and people will know at some point. And you can take refuge in that. And just during this time when you're going through all these difficulties, just practice a lot of self-care and be around the people who are really important to you, the people who know that all this misinformation or fraudulent actions or talk about you is not true, and that will kind of give us like a reality test, kind of like you do in CBT, in cognitive behavioral training, because I was trained as a therapist. So like, people will have these kind of distorted views about themselves or the world, and then we'll invite them to kind of like open up their eyes to other information, right? And then within the context of that wider information, they'll see, well, like, okay, yeah, this is true, but it's not as severe to the degree that I thought it was true, right? Or maybe it's true for these type of people, this group of people who are abusing me. They say I'm a loser. For them, maybe I am a loser. But if I ask other people, the general consensus will be like 80 or 90% of them will say that I'm not a loser. So this really helps, like with kids who are like being bullied, or a spouse that's being denigrated, right, and made worse. Like if you ask other people, people will be like, no, you're an amazing person. Or someone who feels like they're a loser, then you ask their friends and be like, oh, he's not a loser, like he's a great person, I look up to them, right? So sometimes if we look at the people who are most important to us and we rely on their feedback more, and that they know that we're an honest person, and that sometime, point in the future, the truth will be revealed, then we can find refuge in that, in spite of all these difficult kind of situations and rumors and gossiping. So just take refuge in that you know the truth, right? And the truth will come out just like the sun and the moon.
So
okay. Luisa. Aya, go ahead.
Okay. Right. Louisa says, Venables, what are your top tips for a layperson who's trying to become enlightened? I meditate each day, keep trying to think wholesome thoughts, and follow the 5 precepts. Thank you. Oh, that sounds wonderful. Sadhu. Meditate every day. That's not so easy.
No, even for monks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even for monks living in monasteries, it's not so easy. So that is wonderful, because that speaks to all of us of discipline and willingness, to apply energy, make effort, to develop the mind, to develop the heart. So that is, I would say, crucial. Yes, for us to become enlightened and to have a daily practice really helps us to keep our head above water, to keep a sense of continuity around our mindfulness. And I would say, to even add to that, if you have any possibilities, any holiday time, free time, to take yourself and do retreat if at all possible. If it's not possible, it's okay. But, if there's any opportunity, because when we go on retreat, we get a chance to, again, really deepen our practice and to have the space and time to really investigate Dhamma within. So that would be a very good thing. That's a top tip from me. And what you're also saying that you're already doing, trying to think wholesome thoughts, that's fabulous, because we can therefore see that you're watching the mind, you're observing the mind. So we can really become very masterful around what we think when we're practicing mindfulness, when we're developing meditation practice, can't we? So we can notice, as we've been saying, the 5 negative thoughts that will arise between each positive thought, just to see that, to notice any thoughts that are unskillful, unhelpful, and to be willing to just put them aside, just turn the attention away. This is skillful, to develop wholesome thoughts. The Buddha gave us lots of ways in which we can choose to divert our attention from the unwholesome and to bring up the wholesome. And it really is just as simple as that. It's about seeing what's going on, being aware, understanding what's happening, and then choosing the skillful course. So I love that you're observing your thoughts and working with the thinking. This is wonderful to be able to do this. It's like we can sit, meditate, and I would say it's actually very helpful when we're meditating not to give so much importance to the thinking mind, but to actually give ourselves a chance to be embodied, feel the body, feel what's going on here, and develop awareness of the breath, of the sensations in the body. It's really helpful to do that so that we're sort of grounded. And for the rest of our daily lives, we can have some degree of awareness of kind of being here, being now. But then when we're not sitting meditation and you're at work and you're with family and you've got all the responsibilities of life, yes, we can observe the mind and to be able to begin to make space between the thinking and the sense of being anybody at all. It's like observing the mind. When we're observing the mind, we're not in the mind. We're not identifying with our thoughts, but we can start to see they're like a flow of energy. They're a flow of Dharma, and we can learn from that, and we can divert, as I said, the unskillful into the skillful. So I love that you're doing that. And also you point out very importantly, following the precepts. So to be following the Eightfold Path is to practice virtue, follow the precepts, develop the mind in meditation, and to develop wisdom. And I can see that you're doing all of those things. And not only that, but you're also here on a live stream, asking good questions and listening to Dharma teachings and sharing the Dharma with your community. So you also have a Sangha. As Bhante was saying, this is so precious. And let it be a refuge, everybody. This is our refuge, that we have spiritual friends, that we can ask questions, we can get advice from each other. So you're enabling yourself to do that also. And whenever there are questions, ask the questions and investigate the Dharma. And the only other thing I could possibly really add to what you're doing is maybe to bring in the teachings of the Buddha. So there's all sorts of fabulous apps and things, aren't there?
Yes.
You can get a daily quote from the Buddha. This is wonderful. Or just get online. The whole of the Buddha's teachings are there. Sutta Central is very good. If you Google Sutta Central, you can start to read the teachings of the Buddha. And if you're not sure where to start with that, then you can just ask. And look into the words of the Buddha, contemplate them for yourself. So you can do a little bit of reading, maybe just a short passage even, in the morning, the evening, and just let that percolate through the mind during the day. And when you're watching your thoughts, if the thoughts are turning into unwholesome or kind of unhelpful channels of thinking, obsessive thinking, or just cogitating over the past or worrying about the future, you can bring in a teaching and give that to the mind to work on. So this could be another top tip for you if it's not something that you're already doing. But it sounds as though you're really giving a lot of energy for the practice, and I can only say sadhu for that. Thank you for your practice and keep going. Wonderful.
I just like to emphasize how important Kalyanamitta is, how important the Sangha is, just because of like my general experience of how Buddhism is generally practiced in the West, where it's very much like an individualistic kind of practice, and when my experience in Asian communities, it's just like an extended family, like it's just like it's a very different way that it's practiced. It's very communal, not only within the monastic but within the lay people. And even here, we see the devotees here all the time. They're coming to the temple, they're meeting each other outside of here too. So I would just like to invite you to try to spend more time with your Kalyanamitas, with your spiritual friends, to whatever extent you can. If it's just a phone call, a video call, try to meet up with them, try to visit a temple, a monastery, right? Like really try to be part of a community, where you're invested in it. Because, the most important, at least for me, the most important factor in the Dhamma to reach awakening or etc., even to stay in the Dhamma, is like the Buddha told Ananda, Kalyanamitas, right? The entire path. Without them, he said, it's impossible without Kalyanamitas, right? So as long as you're surrounded by Kalyanamitas, you'll practice Sila, because you're going to be trying to mimic their behavior, and they're going to encourage you to practice Sila. You're going to practice Dana, because they're also going to tell you the benefits of Dana. You're going to meditate, because they're going to tell you it's a good thing to meditate. You're going to read you're going to learn the words of the Buddha, because they're going to encourage you in that, because they care about you. They want your benefit. So if you have Kalyanamitas, really, you just got to stay with them, and you're kind of like already heading towards awakening, And if you start slipping off track, then they're going to get you back on track. So just really, this is for everyone. Like everyone here, really focus on Sangha. Like it should feel like family, like that's how close you need to be. Because I've noticed in my own personal experience, it's just Western Buddhism doesn't look like that, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a hobby or self-care or those kind of things, but you don't feel that family kind of thing. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to go play football with the boys, you know? And that's how it kind of feels. It doesn't feel like, wow, like this is my life, my community, you know? Like, so I invite everyone to just to expand your intimacy more, to grow your intimacy more with the people who are around you. And as long as you're around your Kalyanamitas, they're always going to keep you on the path. So I think it's very important. Friendship, togetherness, community, solidarity, you know, like being close to those people who care about you the most. And I think that's such an important part that sometimes we miss when we focus on the technical parts, like, okay, precepts and case study and meditate. We forget, like, no, like family, community, together. We're all the sons of the Buddha, right? We're all the children of the Buddha. Even in the suttas, it says like, oh, I'm the son of the Sakyan, right? Now that we follow the Dhamma. So we're all like a big family now, and we need to kind of work on building these family connections together.
Absurd. I just can't help but add such agreement with what Bante's just said. And how is it that we can see each other sometimes more clearly than we get to see ourselves, isn't it? We might be behaving in certain ways, or, you know, caught up in some kind of way of being that's not entirely in our best interests. And often it will be the people around us who can help us to see that. Like, we all have blind spots, and we can all look out for each other's blind spots. Yes. And, like, you know, gently, we don't even have to try to help in this way. It's just that being together, we're going to reveal for each other what needs to be revealed. And it's just magic how that works in community, right? Yeah.
All right. Now we have Jang. If we know the Dhamma and not experience it in meditation, does that mean that we are still in the dark?
Well, you know, I'm not sure from what Jang's saying whether you're meaning, Jang, that you're not meditating at all, or that you feel you're not able to somehow meditate in the way that you think you should. So I'm not sure which of those it is.
I think what she's saying is that she feels that she understands the Dhamma, like intellectually she knows it. Yeah. But it's not, she's not getting like insights, experiential knowledge into it, like in her meditation. Yeah. It's still not coming up. It's like, I know Four Noble Truths, I know Paticca Samuppada, but like, I haven't experienced it. Like, am I still in the dark because maybe I know it intellectually, but I don't know it by seeing it myself, you know, like, so I think that's what she's kind of like struggling with.
What do you think, Bante? How do you think, you know, what is perhaps the way forward with that?
You know, so instead of looking like how much you have left, look back and see how much you've already come forward, right? So yes, maybe you don't have direct knowledge, right? And you're in the dark in that sense because you haven't experienced Nibbana, you haven't experienced any insight. Okay, but look back. Look, you came out of the hell realms, you came out of the animal realms, you came out of like not knowing the Dhamma. You were born as a human in a time where there's the Dhamma, you're listening to the Dhamma, you have Kalyanamitas, you have access to the teachings of the Buddha, you're practicing. Like, wow, you've made such great progress. Like, even just to know the Dhamma, you've covered like countless lives, you know, you went so far on the path already. But sometimes we focus on the long distance we have ahead of us, and we never give ourselves a pat on the back for all the work we've already done, right? So, okay, yes, technically you're in the dark because you haven't seen for yourself, but wow, you've already done such an amazing job just knowing the Dhamma and being here. So take refuge and take comfort, right? In that, you've done so much work already. And yeah, you still have some more to go. Okay, you're very honest about your practice that you haven't seen, and that's fine, you know, and just trust in the process. You made it this far, and if you continue, there will be a time where you see for yourself, you know for yourself, right? And you won't have to rely on books or someone else telling you. That time will come later, but focus on where you're at right now and everything that you did in the past to get here, which is amazing and incredible.
So And I just want to add that, if you're struggling with the meditation practice, just keep going. Just keep going. It's really challenging for most of us most of the time, and it's like actually just making the time, making the space to sit, even if you feel you're not getting anywhere. It's a huge, huge merit, a huge benefit. The Buddha said it's one mindful breath. One moment of sitting in meditation is worth all the wealth in the world, So it's very, very noble just to be willing to give it a go. And even if the mind is in turmoil, remember how simple actually the meditation really is. The simple teachings around meditation, it's really just about breathing, sitting, being still, observing whatever's happening for you, just whatever's happening, and being willing to sit and stay with that instead of jumping up or deciding we should be doing something else. It's so simple. We can sometimes discount or give not enough importance to this simple willingness to stop and be still for a while. So I really want to encourage you to, do the meditation practice. And there's no expectation really of any kind of result. It's just in and of itself, the work will be done, the benefit will become apparent over time. So I hope that can be encouraging for you.
I think she had another question here, but
Oh.
I don't understand it. I don't know what she means by this. What is the 11 wholesome concomitant?
Oh, I don't know either. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jang. It could be from possibly, I don't know whether it might be from a different sort of tradition like Chan teaching. We're not sure.
If you by any chance have it in Pali, that would help us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you translate things, into English, like it can come out a little weird,
Yeah.
or if you translate it from your own native language into English, it goes from Pali to your language to English, something gets lost. So yeah, if you can give us like some source language or some citation, then it'll be a little bit easier for us to figure this out. Let's see what's next. Here we go. Flower. Venerables. One of the biggest pains I have felt was breaking up with my partner because they wanted to ordain. I understand, but it hurt. How can I stop the thought that they did not love me enough? Oh, I was in this situation, but on the other side.
Oh, tell us.
So right before I ordained, I was very much in love. I was with a beautiful woman, amazing. There's no flaws, and even my family member, my little sister, she told me, "How are you gonna leave her? Like she's perfect." And I was like, "You're right, she is. Yeah, she's right. But that's not why I'm leaving her. I'm not leaving her because there's something wrong with her, which is what she's thinking right now, right? That that person probably didn't love him. That's not the case. I very much loved her. And I didn't leave her because anything was wrong with her or because I didn't love her. It's just because, I also fell in love with the Dhamma, and I fell in love with the Buddha, and I fell in love with monasticism, and in order to fully give myself to that love, I had to let go of the previous love that I had. And I kind of felt like it's the same way how we love our parents, but then we move on like a layperson, and then they built their own family and they spend more time with their own partner and with their own kids. That doesn't mean that they stop loving their previous family, which is their mom and dad and brothers and sisters. You might not even see them for the rest of your life again, right? But you still love them. So I kind of saw it like that. It's not like, it's one or the other. Sometimes we're kind of stuck in this black and white dichotomous thinking, right? It's all or nothing. And I understand your feelings. That feeling that you're having that person didn't love you enough, that is a completely valid feeling, So I'm not trying to dismiss or minimize that feeling. For sure, I understand why someone would feel like that, but I feel, in my case, and I think, for in your case also, that person really loved you, but there's just something else that happened, something else happened, and they took that path. And I still very much, I still very much, care about my ex-girlfriend, right? I still love her. It's just a different way now. The romantic part, the sensual part, all of that is gone. But if someone were to tell me something bad happened to her, like, I would still care to this moment. That concern, right? That kind of like that love you have for like a best friend or for like a brother or sister is still there for her. It's just different now. But yeah, so just kind of I'm telling you from my personal experience, because I went through, like, I had to break up, and she actually, luckily enough, encouraged me to like become a monastic. And she's like, one time she told me like, oh, I think you're stuck in between both worlds. You need to choose. And she gave me kind of a look like, become a monk. And she started crying. And every time we brought the issue came up, she would cry, but she always encouraged me to go, and become a monastic. So then I really knew, oh, she really does love me, because there's that beautiful saying, like, if you like a flower, you pick it and take it with you. But if you love it, you'll let it be there, right? And not destroy it, and let it bloom until it's full. It can become a full flower and do what a flower needs to do. So I very much felt like, that's what my ex-partner did with me, right? She saw that, like, oh, I'm gonna let this flower just completely bloom for everyone to come and see, and everyone smell and enjoy this flower, instead of keeping the flower for me only. And I mean, it just seems like such a beautiful thing. So I hope, my own personal experience can help you kind of, do a little pivot in your perspective, pivot that perspective. Those feelings are there, yes. And, they might never go away. The reality is they might not. When you really love someone, you probably can't ever like completely let them go, but they will change. It will change, and I feel like that's what happened with me. Those feelings change now, but that initial love is still there. So you might still have that feeling like, oh, that person, you feel sad because they left you, but later on throughout life, it's going to get recontextualized, and you're going to see it from a different perspective. So also take refuge in change. Change here is something that can work for you right now, right? And over time, that change is going to bring you more and more relief. I don't know, Aya, do you have anything else to add?
That's just so beautiful. And I couldn't add a thing to that. Thank you. Yeah. Ooh, did we jump?
Yeah. I was at Manal was the next one. Right here.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Dear Venerables, how does one begin to recognize the origin of their sloth and torpor? I know this is a hindrance. It exists. However, I am unable to collect energy sometimes to investigate fully.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Sloth and torpor is a tough one. And, it can be sometimes, because we're very tired. We're not getting enough sleep, or we've got, too many things going on, and we're actually quite exhausted. And sometimes it is the case then that when we want to try and meditate, we'll find ourselves dropping off to sleep. And the trick is, isn't it, to discern, is that because I'm actually just needing a jolly good sleep, so I'll just have some more sleep? Or is it because the mind is, the other possibilities, the mind is, in my case, when I experience sloth and torpor, it's often because I sense there's something I don't quite want to face at this point. The mind's just moving away from, it's trying to...
It's feeling a little tricky, huh?
Blank out. It's really tricky. And, fortunately, we have the precepts, so we're not kind of distracting ourselves too much with entertainment or alcohol or whatever. So we can't get too far away from what's happening. But the mind will sometimes just close down, and that sense of obstruction, sloth and torpor can be a real hindrance to being present. So to discern, is it a physical need for more rest, or is it actually the hindrance of sloth and torpor, is the first thing. And yeah, it can be really difficult to work with this one. I actually think we can use the body to help itself, so if you're wanting to practice meditation and you're really sleepy, stand up. do standing or even better walking meditation. It's actually surprising how valuable that can be. And the thing is, you can't fall asleep when you're walking. So if if you're really rested enough and you want to work with this sloth and torpor, then just get a walking path and just walking 20 paces forwards, 20 paces back, slowly and mindfully, with the eyes just looking a couple, 2-3 steps ahead at the ground. So we're not, it's not distracting at all. And the body's moving, and observe the body moving, feel the feet on the ground, breathe deep, and then you won't be falling asleep. You will be tackling the hindrance of sloth and torpor, and then you can just see what comes. And when the mind is sufficiently alert, you can try sitting again. So, this is one way. Another way is opening the eyes, or having a cold shower. That's a good one. I mean, that really does refresh, the body and mind. It can be a little bit unpleasant, but actually it's also very invigorating. So that's something I also actually like to use when the mind is really fuzzy, it's kind of shying away from being here. So I hope those are some useful tips for you. Anything else, Bante? What do you do, Phil?
I think I have one particular thing that you said that I want to highlight, because I feel like it's kind of like a sign of our times. It's just that many of us are overworked, we're overstressed. There's so many things going on, and we confuse sloth and torpor for like our body's telling us like, we're just basically exhausted, because that's the way like the society has us going nowadays. So, I think a lot that we can do is the most difficult thing that most people find difficult doing when it comes to the Dhamma is changing their lifestyle. So sometimes in order to practice the Dhamma, it requires that we change our lifestyle and not be as busy and be less busy, right? And not focus so much on productivity or careers or whatever, social life, etc. At times the Dhamma requires us to step back from things and be less busy, have less activities, be a few duties, like in the Karaniya Metta Sutta, which is hard to do, but yeah. So I really want people to understand that it's not always the hindrance, right? It's not the hindrance and sloth and torpor that is bothering you in meditation. It's just that you're exhausted, you're tired, and you don't have to do a lot of physical work, but just the strain and knowing that you have to accomplish so many tasks and the bills, and you have so many responsibilities and duties, that tires the mind, thinking about all those responsibilities and chores and duties, So we have to kind of not be overcritical of ourselves, I guess that's what I'm saying. Don't think that it's necessarily like, oh, I'm a person with all these hindrances and, I'm a person of sloth and torpor. No, maybe you're just exhausted because society is putting too many burdens on you and you've taken up too many duties. And maybe you need to reassess your lifestyle and make some lifestyle changes.
That's such a good point, because often we are doing more than we need to, or more than is good for us. And actually, isn't it, so much the case, the Buddhist teachings are really pointing to simplicity, doing less, relaxing more, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm just reminded, as Bante is speaking of, when I first came to stay in a monastery, we had a week of like an intensive practice, round-the-clock practice. It was the beginning of the millennium. And so we were doing 7 days of round the clock, signing up on a rota and sitting meditating. And I spent the whole week sleeping. The whole week. I was trying to go and do these 2-hour sessions, and in the end I just gave up because I kept falling asleep. I went to my room, I laid down, and I literally slept for days and nights. And I realized, oh my goodness, I'm in a place where I can totally relax. Like the peace was, palpable. And for the first time, I was able to just let go of all that energy of doing and being, and that's what happened. So I was just reminded of that. So I think your advice is really important. Yeah, check out, how much am I doing? Can I do less?
So just some thank yous from Rick. Venerable, can you speak about the joy of peace of letting... Oh, there's a question in there. Venerables, can you speak about the joy and peace of letting go? Thank you. I mean, for me, this is very easy. Imagine you're carrying a heavy backpack, a heavy load, and then you drop it off. Like, how does that feel to let go, right? amazing. You're not adding anything in. You're not eating anything. You're not drinking anything. You're not injecting anything. You're not watching anything. It's just the simple absence of that pressure, of that stress, right? Dropping that stress is in and of itself is joyful, is peaceful, right? It's relaxing. It's beautiful. It's happiness, right? Or if you've ever had a toothache, right? And then you go to the dentist and they fix your teeth. He didn't inject happiness into your mouth, but the mere absence of the pain is joyful and peaceful, right? It's like removing a thorn or removing a splinter, and it just feels so good. Or you've been working hard all day and you finally get to sit down, right? That's the joy and peace of letting go, right? Those are the kind of like metaphors that I use when I try to communicate. What is this happiness and peace of letting go? You know it already. You know, you've had experiences, but this is just on a deeper level.
I'm reminded of the sutta where the Buddha, I can't remember if it really relates to meditation, but I suspect it does. It's how to deal with distracting thoughts. I think it's that one. So the Buddha said, you can come to a point when you meditate, you realize, actually, I seem to be running. Why don't I slow down and just walk? And then you experience that. Oh, that's so delicious. And then you think, actually, why do I need to walk? Why don't I just stand still and experience? And then why don't I actually just sit down? Why don't I lie down and fully relax? And it's like, this is the kind of process, isn't it, of letting go, is we recognize I'm actually beginning to relax. I'm actually beginning to feel peaceful. I'm actually beginning to recognize that I don't need all these things and events and entertainments and happenings in order to feel well. No, actually, it's the absence of those things and the simplicity and the spaciousness of doing much less that gives me this sense of joy and well-being. So slowing down, relaxing, it really relates to the last question also, right? So delicious. As you said, it's a given that the more we let go, the happier we get to be.
Okay, the story of Sangha, Richard, a lot of Anjalis.
Chinchaya was the name of the lady who pretended to be pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah, Chincha, yeah. Thank you for that.
Greetings from Australia. Sud. Dear Bhante and Aya, what do you think about devas? Do you think they protect those who have good sila?
We need Bhante Siddhasa here. He loves to talk about devas, doesn't he? So I'm sure you know, Sud. I mean, according to the Buddha, the cosmology, the Buddhist cosmology, there are all these 31 planes of existence, right? And most of them are higher planes of existence, so planes of greater happiness and also more subtlety, more subtle forms, more goodness, more radiance, more brightness, more lightness. And it's just lovely to be aware that this is a possibility. You don't have to believe in it, but just the possibility that maybe there's a lot more going on than we can perceive. The human mind is said to be very paritta, very small, very limited. It's good enough for liberation. So, we're very fortunate actually to be in a human realm because we have a good balance here of the pleasant and the unpleasant that enables us to develop a lot of insight. We're not dwelling like the devas in blissful states all the time, and we're not in the hell realms where we're just assailed with suffering, where there's really not much time or energy to claw our way out of that. So the human realm is a really blessed place to be. But there are these devas, there are these gods, and it's nice to think about them. It's nice to consider, say that we can develop the Brahma Viharas, we can develop the qualities of the gods, even of the devas and also of the gods. And what are their mind states? They have these mind states that are a given for them: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And the Buddha encouraged us to also develop these qualities. And he said these are the divine abidings, so we can live like the gods. So I like to think in this way that, there are these you could say, external planes of existence out there, but actually also within us, we have all of these possibilities because we've had so many births and deaths, countless, the Buddha said, beginningless. We've been there, we've been everywhere. So we can kind of connect with these realms within ourselves. The Buddha was able to visit beings in all the different realms, not because he was literally going somewhere, but within himself, he could connect with all these different mind states, all these different degrees of well-being, of radiance. And so I like to think of the Devas in that way, that these qualities that they have are qualities that are worth cultivating, and we can bring them in and we can help ourselves with loving kindness, with compassion, say, with calm, with joy. We can bring them into our practice, and all we have to do is think of these qualities and they're actually there for us. You know, it's very interesting to realize this. We have this incredible kind of source of well-being within us. Let's not forget that. And this can help us so much to face up to the suffering that's here in the human realm and to work our way through it, you know, mindfully, embrace, open to suffering, and find ways to let go of suffering, bringing in these good qualities as a kind of background well-being, a background of well-being and of right perspective for us. So that's what comes to my mind as an answer.
I'm thinking about like the suttas, how, you know, the devas are always very much consumed by their own affairs. Like they're going to war and they're having a great time, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, when I used to party before I was a monk and I was in the middle of a good time, I wasn't thinking about like, not even my mom at times or anyone else that I loved about, you know, like, and if these heavens are really as pleasant as they're described in the suttas, I wouldn't invest too much into waiting for the devas to come and protect us. You know, they're having too much of a good time. They're blissing out. So there's no real like incentive for them to like look down on us. Actually, it says that the devas see our world as like a toilet, basically, right? That this place is smelly and it's horrible. And it says that one of the biggest fears that the devas experience is when their life's about to run out, that they're going to be reborn in the human realm, right? Because that's such a dirty place. This is like someone being thrown into like excrement, a pile of excrement or something like that. So yeah, like, you know, I wouldn't rely or place all my bets on the devas coming to help us. But according to the suttas, there is devas that I guess when they're not enjoying their lives and they get bored up there, they kind of take a look down here and they protect those. And yeah, so according to the suttas, yeah, and for most people throughout human history, they believe in this or in some version of this. It's just been the given. It's just in the last 100 years plus that we're a little bit more suspicious about it. But most humans throughout human history have believed in some version about something like this, right? So there's that aspect to it that it's been around. It's just kind of been a given forever, and even from like a very kind of like curious and kind of probabilistic perspective, we just know so little about the universe, and we have no idea what's out there. And to say that we're the only ones here and dismiss other kinds of beings goes against everything that we know, even statistically, like probabilities, like it's more probable that we're not, and that the universe is full of life everywhere. And it might look very different. And maybe devas was the way they understood these other beings on other planets throughout the universe during the time of the Buddha, So we can also kind of take it that way. There's many ways that we can contextualize this kind of scenario. And
so it says, well, do they not care?
Or do they not care? I think
who knows?
yeah. I think it's more that they're enjoying their life, and that's the main thing. But here we got another one from Richard. How can one work towards creating the right causes and conditions that will gradually lead to cultivating a wish less they practice it? Everything's practice, So start giving up things, little things, instead of, I don't know, being on your phone for how many hours you are, take 10 minutes off, 15 minutes off, instead of like, well, once a week I always go out to eat something nice. We'll kind of maybe take that away. So the best thing, you're not going to learn it in a book, and it's not going to come necessarily through fighting with these kind of thoughts and feelings in meditation. But like in your everyday life, do things, we need to, I feel like one of my kind of rants is we need to bring the Dhamma into our everyday life and not just leave it for the cushion or for like the book when we're sitting in a chair in a library and reading, or for retreats. And sometimes we try to think our way out of things, or we're hoping that some magical spiritual revelation will happen to us and we'll be able to overcome things. But just, basic daily habits, very simple things that seem like, wow, this doesn't seem like it's really going to have a big effect. But making all these little changes in your life, it's going to lead you towards that. So just catch yourself next time you're trying to order something on Amazon and practice restraint, right? Catch yourself next time you want to go get a nice coffee and pull back, right? Catch yourself all these times that you're giving in, right? Or that this urge to do more, to want more comes up. Not this one, right? Not today, So just kind of bring it more into a very everyday practical level, and you'll see that your mind will then start picking up this new pattern, this new train of thought. Your mind will start inclining towards less and less and less and less. But as long as we keep living our daily lives the way they are, for me, I'm going to be realistic. I find it very improbable that through just reading suttas and meditating, your life is going to change. No, you actually have to put these teachings into practice, into your everyday life. And it's not until we're able to make that transition where we start making these lifestyle changes, where I say it's so hard. People will say, Bhante, I'll read all the suttas, I'll go on retreat, I'll travel to Asia, I'll meditate for I'll take up 8, 10 precepts, but don't tell me to change my life or who I am. Like, they don't want to do that change, right? But I think that's the most important one, we need to change our lives. So the way we change our lives, and wanting less is probably the most drastic life change you can do, is by giving up little things. Start little, giving up little things, and then you'll see how you can start giving up more things, and then the mind will just become disinterested in those things. There'll come some point where like, whatever, I don't really care about it. But it's all about every day, all the time, practice. So you have to do it. It's just not going to appear one day out of nowhere.
Yes. Renunciation.
Yeah. Come on. Here's Paul. Hello, Venerables. Can you give me any suggestions on how to manage repeated feelings of anxiety and fear, both in a work and a personal context? What do you think, Aya?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I'm sure you're not alone. And anxiety and fear are very difficult to be with, aren't they? It's like that trembling, that shaking, sometimes a really cold, shut down feeling. How to work with that? I would say, give time for it. Give time to actually be with those feelings. And it can be very counterintuitive. It's like we'll tend to want to, just distract from that, because it's very hard to be with the raw experience. It's easier actually to get caught up in lots of thinking and activity to try and assuage our anxiety and fear that way, but it ultimately doesn't really work. So to actually be willing to come back to the source and sit with it, I would really recommend to sit, make time for meditation, sit quietly. It doesn't have to even be sitting on the mat in lotus posture or anything like that, just to find a quiet space. Give yourself some free time when you've got nothing else to do. As Bhante was just saying, the willingness to renounce, let go of activity and just be still, and to feel, what's it like? What is this anxiety? What am I anxious about? You can bring up anything that comes to mind around what it is the fear, what is the anxiety around. But to come then from the thinking, move the attention into the body. How does it feel? Can I breathe into that? Can I breathe into those feelings of fluttering, tightness, cold, whatever it is for you? Breathe deeply and be with those feelings. And in this way, we really come to the source and change happens. Often our perceptions around feelings can have that label, anxiety, fear. But when we start to be with the body, be with the mind, and see what's really going on, then those labels can actually change. And we might feel, oh, actually, it's not anxiety, it's more like excitement. Or I'm not afraid, it's more like, I don't know, worry, or it's more like anger in there. It's really interesting what can happen. But what we're doing is enabling change to happen. Change happens when we are willing to accept the way things are. And to be able to accept whatever feelings we have, we need to be able to be with them. This takes time. It requires a letting go of other things and a willingness to be present for those feelings. So I hope that's helpful, and just really encourage you to check it out. Yes, there's a sense of fear and anxiety. Okay, let me investigate this. What's actually happening in the body at this time? How does it feel? And see what happens. Be willing to face the demon and see what happens to that demon. Demons will always change when we face up, when we're willing to kind of be kind to them, welcome them, invite them in. They often turn into something very different. Wish you well with that. And I trust that you'll experience the change. Yeah.
What came to mind was, if we're in a very difficult, challenging environment, the feelings of anxiety and fear are very rational and reasonable feelings to have, So, our mind and body reacts to our environment, So if you're in a dangerous place, if you're in a place of uncertainty, of course you're going to feel anxious. Of course you're going to feel fearful. These states of being, these emotions, these thoughts might be the proper reaction to a difficult and strenuous situation, So we also have to consider, hey, if this situation is dangerous to me, maybe I need to reevaluate why I'm here, and maybe I need to change. I need to quit this job. I need to find somewhere else. I need to move. I need to do something, right? So, because just this is not your case, but I find many times, consciously or unconsciously, there's kind of like this spiritual bypass kind of thing that happens, right? Where like, instead of dealing with the main issue, which is like the environment or a person or something, we kind of want to, okay, well, I feel like I can't change this, so I don't want to change this, so it's too difficult. So I'm going to try to find like some symptomatic relief, find relief for the symptoms. So I want to calm my anxiety and my fear instead of dealing with what's causing me the fear and anxiety, right?
Right.
And that looks different for everyone, and not everyone has the privilege to be able to move or change their conditions, but to be able to acknowledge, hey, this fear and anxiety is not irrational, right? There's nothing wrong with me. It's the environment that's really toxic and it's dangerous. And that's why I feel anxiety and fear. Any rational person, any normal person would feel anxiety and fear in this situation, right? And that will kind of bring us a sense of relief and contextualize this fear and anxiety instead of seeing it like, well, pathologizing yourself, right? And no, maybe it's the actual environment that's the pathology and not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's the environment that's wrong, right? So there's also that we need to think about. That's also a very important thing to bring it to consider. And when it comes just to like dealing with fear and anxiety, I think what Aya said is perfect. Just explore. Not everything's so black and white, not everything's so clear. Maybe we're not familiar with this feeling, but we're familiar with anxiety, so we call it anxiety. But if we explore, we might notice that there's something else there. Maybe it's anger, right? Maybe you're just excited, like Aya said. Emotions are so complicated, And so I just invite you to sit with it. And the more you understand it, the less you'll be scared of it. We fear what we don't understand, right? We fear the unknown. But the more you know it, the more familiar, the more you understand, right? And you'll see that these fears and anxieties are not all you thought they were, right? And you gain more experience with them, and you see, well, I reached this peak and then it ends. And you see how the impermanence of it too, right? And how it changes in duration and how it changes in rate and intensity. So when you feel like you can't take anymore, there will be a time when it's going to come down, and that's going to help you stay in that space, uncomfortable space. I think it was Pema Chodron said, learning to be uncomfortable with the comfortable, right? Learning to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. right? Yeah. So I think that's an amazing practice that we do on the cushion.
Yeah, and it's just as you say, Bhante, we do that practice on the cushion, and then we can often get a much clearer kind of perspective around what might need to change in our lives, right? We have this we're kind of grounded, and we can see it almost can happen. It's almost like we make it possible for change to happen where it needs to happen.
Yeah.
So I just really see how the two things go together.
Yeah.
We do the internal work, and the external situation becomes clearer, and then things can shift and change. So who knows what's going to happen there for you, but I trust it's going to be good.
Then we just have some thanks from Rick and hello Champika and John. No, I think that was you can share those kind of questions. I didn't see a problem with the question at all. Thank you from Luisa. And we got so many questions, and we're running out of time already. We're not going to be able to do everyone. So maybe this might be the last one. From Jojo. Would you say that dependent liberation is an accurate way of describing the Eightfold Path? Does eighth factor of the path lead to the next, and the Eightfold Path starting with right view?
That's fabulous. I never heard that before. I think that's really lovely. Dependent liberation. Yeah. Is the answer.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, because all the path factors, don't they all work together to enable us to make progress on the path for liberation? So it really is the case. Yeah. And we can maybe, have discernment and see, is there any particular aspect a little bit weak that I can strengthen? How can I balance all these eightfolds, And right view is surely the guiding light for us, isn't it? Yeah, to have the understanding how to practice, and then to bring in all the other path factors, and essentially develop in goodness, in virtue, develop our meditation practice. I mean, train the mind, purify the heart, and develop wisdom. Yeah. Dependent liberation.
Yeah.
I really like that.
The way I like to think about it, when people say if they should work through it, like sometimes people think like, okay, I got to do one right view, then I get to right intention, then I get to, but it's not like that. Like as I was already saying, we can work on all of them together, although they all do rest on the base of right view. Right? You need that base of right view, then you can kind of work on all of them. But even right view won't be perfect, because if it was perfect, you'd be an arahant. So there's a little bit of right view, and just with that little drop of right view, you can start developing all the other 7 steps in the path. And I like to think about it like a video game. And in video game, when you're a character, the character has many different abilities that you can develop, and you just don't only develop their strength or speed or etc. You can develop all of them simultaneously. So if you ever play like World of Warcraft or any kind of real time like RPGs or anything like that, in any of those games, that you can develop a character, many of these aspects and qualities simultaneously, right? It doesn't have to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5. So that's the way, because I used to play a lot of video games. So that's the way I see the Eightfold Path. Like, I'm leveling up all these different dimensions of my character, but I don't have to go like one in a row. Although there does need to be that base of like right view. So we have 2 more minutes.
Ooh.
I'm trying to see if there's anyone who didn't get a chance to speak before we go to anyone else's question. But
there's just maybe 3. Is it 3 or 4? We can try doing really short answers.
Okay,
if you don't mind.
Okay, let's do really short answers. How can one better train the mind to distinguish between intellectual understanding and direct experiential comprehension of the Dhamma teaching in order to uphold right view? I think the Buddha said one knows for themselves, right? So you'll know it for yourself. There won't be no question. Once you directly experience it, you're going to know. There will be no doubts.
And how to do that? Meditate. Develop the meditation practice. Experience the teachings, as Bhante said, for yourself.
Okay, just some more thanks. Is that a question? Oh, yeah, it is. Dear Venerable, I understand you are in Vasa. It is very inspiring as I heard monks meditate and try to do more rigorous practice. Do you have any advice on how one should practice as a layperson during Vasa, other than supporting the monks Can you do personal practice to help improve oneself during the Vasa period? So at least in my temple, during the Vasa, lay people come more and they support more and they help us with all the chores so the monks can dedicate more to practice. So during the Vasa, my temple is so busy. So many people there, And I know like in Sri Lanka, that's also the case. Like during the Vasa, people go more because there's more programs. Monks are giving more Dharma talks. There's more like meditation. There's more pujas. There's more things. So I think because think about the context of the Vasa is to bring the community together because the monks were always traveling. So keeping the monks in one place. So I think this is also an opportunity for the lay people to come together, right? Even if your temple isn't that open to all the people, maybe you can connect with the other Buddhist people in your area and try to connect and focus on building a community during the Vasa where people are not supposed to be traveling. So you kind of got us to yourself for these 3 months. We can't leave, we're stuck with you. You're stuck with us. So make the best of it.
Come and practice with us if you're anywhere near Empty Cloud.
Here's a question. Why should we learn the Abhidhamma?
Well, it's not essential, really, to learn the Abhidhamma. I mean, the Abhidhamma is very interesting. We have the Vinaya, the rules, all the stories of the monks and nuns at the time of the Buddha, and a lot of advice about our conduct and the way we live our life as monastics, which is also relevant for lay people. We have the suttas, the teachings of the Buddha. I'm talking about the Tipitaka, right? The 3 baskets of the transmission in Theravadan Buddhism of all the rules, the teachings, the second basket, all the discourses of the Buddha, so valuable. And then the third basket is the Abhidhamma, which means the higher Dhamma, the higher teachings. The Abhidhamma is a very different presentation to the lectures, the discourses, the suttas of the Buddha. There's a kind of, it's almost mathematical in a way, like kind of grids of charts.
So they're making maps, right?
Yeah, like maps.
Maps of the mind and maps
of the mind. Yeah. All the different mind states that are possible. So it is actually quite interesting to look at the Abhidhamma just to give us a sense of how to label all the different experiences we may have. In Burma, it's very much part of the curriculum, isn't it? The schools even teach children aspects of Abhidhamma, and the monks and nuns all study the Abhidhamma. In the Thai forest tradition, it's really not emphasized at all. Many people really barely touch it and focus more on the first 2 baskets. So my sense is it's not essential. If you have the kind of mind that enjoys analysis and is curious, what is this Abhidhamma that we're talking about, then have a look. There are some very good contemporary texts which try to explain the Abhidhamma, because if you go to the source, it's quite difficult to even begin to enter into that, because it's a very particular format, which isn't it's a bit dry. It's a bit difficult to fully grasp and understand. But there are texts where there's support in making sense of the Abhidhamma. So yeah, it's something one can investigate. Not essential, but very interesting for those who enjoy study. Remember always, though, that whatever information we take in, very, very important to try put it into practice, experience for ourselves the teachings of the Buddha, and that really is through meditation practice. So we don't need to make things complicated. Actually, it's very simple, the path of practice. But if we want a little bit of mental nourishment, well, maybe have a little look at the Abhidhamma. You don't need to be an expert on it in order to be liberated.
Yeah, that's it. I think you said it all.
That was quite a long answer, actually. We're at the time now.
Yeah, well, we got through them all, Aya. So we're good now. Wonderful. Yes, Mary? Yes. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating. Just like to remind you, to share these videos with your friends, share them on your Facebook page, share them throughout social media. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, subscribe, comments, you can always comment and we can continue the conversation on. I know at least the talks that I give, I check the comments. Like, subscribe, share, comment, and et cetera, all these good things that we have to do. And I'm so happy that I got to spend this evening with everyone here, especially with Aya here helping me out with this talk, because my mind is very directed in a certain way, and Aya's mind she has I feel like a very open and compassionate and gentle mind, where sometimes I can get lost in the details. So I think this was a nice balance.
I so appreciate it. It's so rich for us. Also, it's so rich to have these questions, to have the chance to reflect on them and to listen to one another. It's just so beautiful. Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you, friends.
Yes. Have a good one, wherever you may be. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.